He called himself the Weepy-Voiced Killer. Meet Paul Michael Peters, a quiet man who wore grief like a mask. In the early 1980s, St. Paul, Minnesota was shaken by a series of brutal murders. Women were attacked while walking alone, on sidewalks, in parks, in broad daylight. Nothing about the crimes felt random, but most shocking was something prosecutors later highlighted. Peters's voice, haunted and trembling, found on the tapes he recorded after each crime. Paul Peters grew up unremarkable. Born in 1950 in suburban Minnesota, he was quiet, polite, a loner with a fascination for police scanner radios. He worked modest jobs, factory shifts, warehouse loading docks. He married once. That ended quickly. Some who knew him say he struggled with isolation. Meanwhile, the city felt safer than most places, until a whisper, a sobbing message on an answering machine, ripped through that peace. It started in April 1982. A woman was found strangled in her car. There were no witnesses. Investigators found only her phone, still connected. That phone became the link. Each time the killer struck, he'd call in. Some calls made on the victim's lines. His voice was the same, shaky, choking back tears, dripping with remorse and yet filled with menace. "I can't stop crying," he'd say softly. "I'm so sorry." Meanwhile, the city panicked. Police increased patrols. News reports warned women to walk in pairs, to avoid phone booths, to stay alert. But the murderer remained unseen, unheard, until he spoke. In May, another body. In June, another. Each time, the killer called in to broadcast his sorrow. Always tearful, always distressed. The voice tapes became grisly proof, a man crying over his own crimes. As tensions rose, detectives grew desperate. They analyzed voice patterns, they traced calls, they checked phone logs against victims' last known times, places. The killer seemed to pick familiar spots: the campus of St. Paul College, downtown dim streets, bus stops in shadow. All the while, his voice rang out in horror, like he expected pity. In the following years, the city descended into fear. Women traveled in groups. Daylight walks became rare. Someone even set up phone lines near remote trails, hoping to catch his call. Tips flooded lines, fugitive sightings, strange sobbing noises, a man seen standing over a body then vanishing, but nothing concrete. Then came a tip. An ex-neighbor remembered Peters. They said his voice matched, especially that broken-voiced confession tone. Investigators listened back. The similarities were too striking. They obtained his medical and phone history. They learned he'd had access to a phone booth near one victim, that he'd been at a bar near another. What followed was a quiet arrest. Peters was stopped driving one evening. The crimes. His trial became a media sensation. People listened to the tapes. They heard regret, they heard guilt, but they heard too much control. The killer sobbing in calculated emotion. He seemed to perform, not just break. Psychologists testified in court. They said tears can mask guilt or amplify it, but they couldn't say if his emotion was real. Still, his sobs became evidence. Meanwhile, forensic evidence tied him to two of the crime scenes. Fibers on clothing, mud from a park, phone booth receipts, each a brick in the case. The jury heard victim testimonials. Women who'd survived recalled looking into his eyes and hearing him sob. "He cried for me," one said, "and then he almost killed me." By late 1984, the verdict came in. Guilty. The Weepy-Voiced Killer was sentenced to life without parole. Peters never recovered. His tears stopped, but so did any sense of humanity he once claimed. This was not a man driven purely by hatred or rage. It was a man who weaponized his own emotion. His tears became his signature. It was the voice that haunted Minnesota. But behind that trembling sob was a man capable of terrifying violence. And in a courtroom packed with reporters and survivors, the mask of sorrow would begin to fall. As the trial of Paul Michael Stephani, the so-called Weepy-Voiced Killer, began in 1985, prosecutors had one goal: prove that his remorse didn't erase the reality of what he had done. Stephani stood accused of 3 murders and multiple attempted murders. The prosecution opened with the eerie, unforgettable phone recordings, the same quivering voice that called 911 after each attack. One tape played in court started with, "Please don't talk. Just listen. I killed somebody again." The jury sat in silence. Some shifted in their seats. The sound of a man crying while describing in detail how he beat, stabbed, and left women to die was unlike anything they had heard before. Meanwhile, prosecutors laid out the timeline. The first confirmed victim was Karen Potak, a 20-year-old student brutally beaten in St. Paul on New Year's Day 1981. She survived, barely. Her skull had been cracked open with a tire iron. Doctors later said it was a miracle she lived. "God damn, I'll never kill again. I can't stop myself," he cried. But he did kill again. In July 1982, 33-year-old Kathleen Greening, a schoolteacher, was found drowned in her own bathtub in a suburb of St. Paul. Though Stephani never called the police after this murder, authorities later connected him to the scene based on circumstantial evidence and his own confession years later. What followed was a shocking escalation. On August 6, 1982, Barbara Simons, a 40-year-old nurse, was found stabbed over 100 times with an ice pick. She had been out dancing the night before and reportedly told a waitress she was nervous about the man she'd met. That man? Paul Michael Stephani. The night Simons was found dead, police received another panicked call. "Please don't talk. I'm sorry I killed that girl. I stabbed her 40 times. Kimberly Compton was the first one." The voice was unmistakable. The tears sounded sincere. But the death toll kept rising. As detectives zeroed in, Stephani made a critical mistake. On August 21, 1982, he attacked Denise Williams, a 19-year-old sex worker he picked up on the street. But unlike his previous victims, Denise fought back. She smashed a glass bottle over his head and escaped. Covered in blood, Stephani drove himself to the hospital. That call to the ER was his downfall. The nurse on duty noticed that his voice matched the mysterious crying man heard on police tapes. Police quickly arrived. Blood evidence from his car linked him to Denise's attack, and, eventually, DNA and physical evidence tied him to Simons and the earlier victims. In court, the recordings became a chilling testimony against him. Experts were brought in to match his voice. Surviving victims identified him. And then, as a final blow, came Stephani's confession. Years into his prison sentence, after being diagnosed with terminal skin cancer, Stephani finally admitted to his crimes. On his deathbed in 1997, he told authorities, "I just want to get it off my chest before I die. Not for them, for me." He confessed to killing Kathleen Greening, the one case that lacked a phone call. He confessed to attacking Denise Williams and to killing Barbara Simons. He revealed the truth behind the voice. But even then, there were no clear answers why he did it. Psychologists speculated that Stephani may have suffered from a severe personality disorder, or perhaps harbored deep self-hatred rooted in childhood trauma. But there was no definitive diagnosis, no manifesto, no clear motive, just the voice. Elsewhere, families of the victims struggled for decades. Some said they never forgave him. Some said his tears only made the wounds deeper. What made this case unforgettable was not just the horror of the attacks, but the contradictions. A man who committed brutal, senseless murders. One thing is certain. The Weepy-Voiced Killer left a scar not only on his victims, but on an entire city. he turned his guilt into a weapon and made his cries part of the crime. If this case gripped you, and you want more chilling, real-life investigations just like it, subscribe, like, comment, and share this video so we can bring you more dark mysteries from the world of true crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and always listen closely. You never know who's calling.